Hello.
Hey.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, pretty good. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
All
Jellis, thank
right.
you so much for coming on my podcast. I really wanted to introduce you, but I think I'm just going to speak too much, so it's better if you introduce yourself first, and then we can go. We can see where we're going from there.
All right, sure. Like a short bio about me or introduction is just that I'm a therapist and I am the founder of the IPS Project, which is an educational platform of life.
That's it.
That's the short version on who I am and what I do mainly at the moment, but I can attach a whole lot more of other things on it as well,
Yeah,
of
I was
course.
going to say it's much less than what I know. You are. So we're going to dig a bit deeper into this, but first, I think it's more interesting if you tell your story from the very beginning. So I'd like to know what's your background, which is what I mean by that is what did you do after high school? What was the path that led you to eventually creating the IPS platform and to become a trauma therapist? This is what I'm really interested in now, so you can just speak as much as you want. Tell us what you did.
Um, so my high school was honestly a very tough time for me in a lot of ways, and it's very complex to explain it all. But in general, I was pretty unhappy with myself and with life, and I was just very bored back then with just I don't know everything. Everything was so boring because life was basically like waking up, going to school, doing homework, and just going to bed and repeat. And I just hated that so much. And then other reasons that I just started to develop like these kind of dark thoughts, like losing my dad when I was young, being quite short for a guy, which kind of like started to, bite on me, on my self-esteem.
How tall are you?
I'm a meter 46, so that's like 5.4.
I think you mean 64.
A meter 46.
Wait, 46 centimeters? No, you're taller than that.
I'm a meter and 46 centimeters.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yep. Yeah, but it was like one of the many ingredients sort of that led to just not liking myself, and then accompanied with that just like finding school dull and boring. So I got in quite a dark place over those years between like 12 to 18. But all of that kind of changed when I was 18 and sort of was able to legally leave school. And I knew that I had to take like a chance to do something about how I was feeling, because I was just not able to just keep living like that on how I was feeling back then. And so I made a plan and I booked a volunteering project to South Africa, which was a building project. And I went 2 months to there, came back just completely different. And, by everything that I saw, witnessed, and all the possibilities that I sort of started to getting some glimpses of that were possibly life. And then I just decided to continue traveling. And I did that for 3 more years and traveled to many countries.
So
Uh,
let's pause here. Was school making you unhappy, or was it the whole routine that was making you unhappy?
it was one of the ingredients. School was one of the ingredients that made me unhappy. But it wasn't the only reason. There were other things, like I said, like losing my dad and sort of, because I lost him like when I was 4 years old, and never having anyone to talk about that. And yeah, my own self-esteem, and just again, yeah, school was definitely a big element though. That made me just think that life was always gonna be that boring, that it was always gonna be like that kind of same routine, and it felt like a prison. That's how that time felt to me. That I was just like a
Okay, so maybe
prisoner.
it was the fact that yeah, you didn't have your freedom, you weren't living your own life, you had to do what other people wanted you to do.
Yep. And I was also not feeling intellectually like challenged in any way by school, by what they taught to us. So I wasn't paying a lot of attention to everything. Um, yeah.
Okay, so then you went to South Africa, and that really changed your life, and you traveled for 3 years.
Yep.
So what did you do during these 3 years? How did you make money? Did you work in the countries you were living in, or how did you freelance? How did it work?
So I basically went to Australia. I had a working visa there for a year. Worked there on. Just did a lot of different jobs there. Earned money that way. But then also did other things like just couch surfing and hitchhiking and just wild camping to just kind of make the whole travel. You can do a lot of things to travel quite cheaply actually. And then I came sometimes then I came back sometimes in the summer to Belgium to just work like 2 months in a restaurant, earn some money, and I went back again for many months to another country, and I kind of did that on repeat. And that's how I was able to travel to many countries at a young age, because I did it quite cheaply, and I always was saving up money to just do this mainly.
Yeah, and so while everybody else was bored at university, you were exploring the world and learning about real life, because we all know that university is not real life.
Yeah, well, you learn different things at university and in school, right? I just learned other skills, and I just learned who I was, and that was something that I, when I was in high school, didn't know. I didn't know like my qualities and what I was like capable of, or I knew nothing about myself, and just traveling made me explore who I was, but also made me explore what the world had to offer. And it was so much more than I ever realized back then, when I was like in a very dark place. And it was amazing. Like traveling really saved my life in so many ways, and it changed me completely.
Yeah. So how did the IPS platform start then?
So the IPS project actually started when I was like 21, after I kind of came back from those 3 years of traveling. That's sort of when I started to work on this idea of making a platform where where I could like bring things that you don't get in school, like that kind of life education on all these different topics that we know nothing about or very little, and that school definitely doesn't bring, and well, neither are parents often. Like mental health, just the mind, relationships, the body and brain, all these categories that are so complex and we know nothing about, and we're just like thrown out in the world, and we just have to figure it out. So I wanted to create a place where people could come to and find just that kind of education. And when I was 21, I started to make this, which started out like just as a simple blog. But then over the years now, because I've been working on it for, I'm 29 now, so yeah, 8 years. It came from a simple blog to quite an amazing, I think, platform that has just thousands and thousands of people visiting. I get a lot of private messages on Instagram and emails from people thanking me on the content there. So yeah, it's really awesome actually.
So is it now, or was it from the beginning that you had all of these messages of people thanking you?
No, over the years, right? In the beginning, I don't know if anyone actually visited my website because it was just so tiny and so small. But over the years, more and more, and now I regularly get like emails from people and DMs from people thanking me on a specific piece of content that's on the platform there.
Okay, so how did it start? So basically, you started a blog, and when you started the blog, did you already have the vision for what it was going to become today, or did you like see it evolve as time went by?
A little bit of both, actually. I had the exact idea on how and what I wanted to create, but I just didn't know how to do it. And I also had to figure out everything, right? So I didn't know anything about how to host a website, how to create one, how to do a podcast, anything of that. So it was through actually learning all those skills, on how I could make a website and everything around it, that I also started to build more towards that vision on how I wanted to have it. But that took years, right? Of process and progression and of refining what, that kind of rough stone or diamonds that it was back then to more of a finer diamond now. Something more specific and clearer of what it is actually trying to be. But it took years.
So how did you start to monetize your website? How did it go? Did you put some ads first, or did you do affiliate marketing, or did you start building like products? How did you decide to monetize the IPS project?
I wasn't actually in the beginning. I mean, of course I was thinking about it, right? But I was so focused on just building it out, like putting content on it.
Yeah, you weren't like, the money, give me the money.
I was actually, at that time, also working, I was a photographer actually back then. And I mean, I still love photography a lot now as well. But that was also one of the ways that when I was traveling, I fell in love so much with the world that I also wanted to capture it and share sort of what I was seeing to other people. And then I really started to love photography a lot. And I worked as a photographer for quite a few companies when I was traveling. And the money that I was earning when I was building the IPS project was actually coming from the photography, because I had some photos, a lot of photos on stock websites. And by that time, I also was working on, or finished actually, one of the first courses that I ever made. And that was my photography course for beginners, which is still ranked after so many years now on Udemy as the top 3 photography courses that you can buy. And there's like thousands of them on there.
Okay, so wait, because there is a lot to unpack here. So first, when you were traveling, you learned how to become a photographer, and then you said you got some clients for your photography activities. So how did you find these clients?
Just the internet. I know it's
you just sent an email or what's up here?
Exactly. It's just together with a friend who is a videographer still. Is quite a known videographer in Germany actually. But by that time he was also still starting out. We teamed up and we traveled to a few countries like Iceland, for example. We just then, before we went to there, just went through all the companies that we were interested, or the kind of photography and videography that we wanted to do, which was more like adventurous kind of videography and photography. And we just sent an email to all of the companies out there with our offer. And well, if you make a good offer, or a good enough offer, at least someone might be interested or will be interested. And that happened to quite a few of the companies there. And then we just went to there for 2 weeks and worked with like 3 companies. And then I think another company, we just got like a free tour in exchange for like photos and videos. So it was not always about money, but then the photos that I took that I didn't sell to them or that they bought, I sold on my stock portfolio.
Okay, so for these companies, did you shoot ads, or was it just videos for their website?
Yep, it was mainly like content for their website or their social media.
Okay, and then you also sold some photos online, as you said. You had some stock photos.
Yep.
And then you built the course for Udemy.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so which year was this?
Honestly, I can't remember. How old was I? I think I was 22 or something.
So you were very early in the whole online courses space then.
Oh yeah, and that definitely helped in ranking it so high, my photography course on Udemy. But it also is a really good one, right? So you gotta be lucky. Yeah. Well, you gotta be lucky sometimes that you were just an early person on that platform. But it also still has to be good. Otherwise, people are just gonna rate it with 1 stars. Yeah. So I was very early actually to it.
So were you following anyone that was already building courses, that was building
No.
website? Because, well, I think, well, blogging, it was the very first thing we did on the internet, but I think people really started realizing they could make so much money in maybe, 2016, 2017, and then you had people were doing dropshipping at the time, and then you had all of these Udemy courses that came about dropshipping. You were much before that. You were much earlier than that. So what did you find the idea through Googling, or did you find anyone on social media that was already doing it?
Actually, I have almost no idea on how I like. There wasn't a person or someone that I was like, that's a good idea that on why I did it. I don't know. I think
It just happened.
I there's a reason, probably, right, but I can't strongly remember that reason. Probably I was just looking for ways to monetize or how to earn money online, because in the beginning I was also still figuring that out. So probably it came like that there was also this option of like, creating and selling an online course. And I always liked, just making things, making content. That's mainly what I do as on the IPS project. I'm mainly a content creator.
Yeah.
And I just liked everything around making courses. So it just seemed like to me like, that sounds like a fun idea actually to do. And then it surprisingly worked out so much better in a way on how much I earned from it, that I was like, wow, all right, this is actually quite an interesting something to explore more.
Yeah, this is good. Okay, so you were traveling, you were taking pictures in order to fund your travel, and all of that money as well, you were reinvesting it into the IPS project. But I guess at some point, all of these investments had to pay off, right? So when did the IPS project start earning money?
It's also a bit hard to exactly know the exact date. I guess the moment that I started to create the first course for the IPS project, that's where the real bigger money came in. But how long was that ago? I think when I was 23 then or something, or 23. I made some other photography courses back then when I was like 22, 23. And then I made my first course for the IPS project, I think when I was like 23 or 24 or something. And that worked out really well as too. And then sort of the idea to further, because by then I also had a podcast and I was interviewing all these interesting people. And
Well, you already had a podcast by then?
I had it quite early.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yep.
So basically, when the pandemic hit and people were like, "Oh, maybe I'm going to create an online course," you were like, "Guys, I've been doing this for 10 years."
Yeah, the same with the podcast. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So you went all in on online course creation.
Yeah.
As I understand.
But then also the guests that I had on the podcast, because the idea was sort of to build out this library of, because I enjoyed creating courses so much, this library of online courses on these different subjects all around like life education in the categories of like mental health or relationships or the minds, etc. And so I wanted to also do that with guests who have been on the podcast. And then I started doing that. So by now, the first two guests who've been on the podcast, there's already 2 courses out from other guests that are on there. And this year I'm also like working with 3 more guests who have been on the podcast. So the idea is to create quality / fun courses that will bring you some live education. But mainly I'm trying to do this more with the guests who've been on the podcast. And occasionally I create one myself too.
Okay. So your goal, as I understand, is to build some sort of, you want to have your own Udemy, some sort of educational platform for like skills.
Or your own, or a little bit like the Netflix or something. And I'm not saying I'm going to be able to make that much content like Netflix, right? But the goal is in the end to exclusively offer it at the IPS project. Now it's on other marketplaces like Udemy or Skillshare. But the goal in the end will be to have it exclusively on the IPS project. But I just need a few more courses before it's like a good offer that I can give to people.
Okay, so why don't you explain what these courses are about and how it works and
Yep.
the type of benefits that people can get from them?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of courses depends a little bit, but in general, again, they're about life education. You will learn skills that you can apply in life, and I will give a few examples, right? And it is always in the categories of around mental health, relationships, the mind, the body and brain, and then we recently also added money to the platform. But someone that I interviewed is a two-time world record holder from Sweden in ultra. Well, she's an ultra runner, and she, for example, created with us a course on goal setting and confidence. And I mean, it literally has thousands and thousands and thousands of students, that one, and so many people are enjoying it a lot. But that's where you just learn from, well, someone who really knows what she's talking about on goal setting. I, for example, created a course on CBT, on cognitive behavioral therapy, because that's the therapy that I am specialized in, and how you can apply those tools from CBT to heal past wounds or to unstuck yourself in life. And this can be on a variety of different issues like depression and anxiety. And then someone else that I interviewed that has a course. She's a meditation instructor and yoga instructor, and she created a course around meditation and managing stress through meditation and yoga. Those are just a few examples.
Okay.
And then there's 3 more coming that I'm not gonna. Well, I can't talk too much about yet.
Okay, all right. And surprise, it will be for later. Okay, so this is exactly where I wanted to get to. So you told us you are a serial traveler, you are a photographer, freelancer, you also are a content creator, and then you're also a trauma therapist.
Mm-hmm. Although I would more apply like CBT therapies, but I have also like specialized a lot in trauma. I mainly help people individually, right, in one-on-one sessions around depression, traumas, or like suicidal thoughts.
Okay, so how did you become a therapist? Did you go to university, or what? Did you follow a special course, or?
Sure. So after that, I came back from my travels and I worked on the IPS project for some years. That's when I actually did a specific education on becoming a trauma therapist, which took like 2 years. And then I also, after that, went to work as a volunteer for the suicide line. And the reasons why I'm interested, or why I also wanted to, individually give one-on-one therapy on these things, is because I struggled also personally with depression and suicidal thoughts and traumas. So it's also personal reasons and experiences that are there. And now I am in university also to become a clinical psychologist.
Okay, so eventually after going away from the school system, you went out and learned all of these skills, and eventually you went back to university.
Yep. After I knew who I was and what I exactly wanted to do.
Okay. So
university is also, depending on which subject, way more engaging and way more, interesting than high school often.
Yeah, and I think as well, I think, as you said, it's important to know exactly what you want to do in life, and this is definitely something that few 18-year-olds know, right? I kind of feel, I mean, when I was at university, I was already quite old, I was 21 years old, and I kind of felt that all of the 18 years old I was studying with just went to study this because, that was what everybody was doing, right? You go to high school and then you go to university and then you go and get a job. But I didn't feel like anyone was really pulled by the topic that they were studying. And you actually did the complete opposite, where first you went to find out what you wanted to do and learn. And eventually, after many, many years, you were like, okay, I really want to become a therapist and help people because maybe I suppose, right, that maybe because you had gone through some pretty dark times yourself, you wanted to help people going through these dark times as well, and to help them get better. And so going to university then became meaningful for you. Is it correct?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. That's why in
Okay.
general, I think, I mean, it's different for everyone and you got to make your own decisions, right? But when you're 18, I think like take a year to just explore who you are. That's a good, I think it's a good long-term investment to actually go and travel for a year, for example, to just see a bit more of the world and the options and possibilities there are. Because it's true, when you're 18, you're so young and you got to make
And you know
quite a
nothing.
big...
I remember at
No,
18, I knew nothing. The thing is, I still think I know nothing now, right? I'm 27.
you know
I still
more
think
though.
I know more, but I still know nothing. So yeah, when you're 18, you really know nothing. Indeed,
Yeah.
it's impressive. So so what are you doing now? I guess you're working on the IPS project. You working still? Are you still studying or?
Yeah.
Okay, so how many more years do you have?
Yeah, because I am working full time. I am doing the studying part time, so it's taking a few more years. But it will probably take like another 4 or 5 years or something.
Okay. And so what are you focusing on? You said you were working full time. Are you working full time on the IPS project?
Yep. Mainly, I'm focusing exactly on the IPS project, and just of course, just building that out, creating more courses, more podcast episodes, and then also because this was a long-term goal that I've been working towards too, that is now coming closer to actually being able, that I actually can realize like this year or next year, is to also actually buy, to take the online also offline. So I want to buy like a place and sort of build it into sort of a community center or a center where workshops can be given. And yeah, I the specific details I don't want to talk about too much yet because I'm also still like figuring them out. But the idea of what I want to create, I do have very clear in my head actually. So that's also very exciting, and then also just focusing more on like in-person events, but because of Corona, that kind of delayed a little bit. But this year, next year, I actually want to do more in-person events with the IPS project. So those are a few things, and the studying is definitely a big thing that I'm focusing on right now too. And then I also just have like other side hustles or things that I'm just interested in that I like.
Like a camping car. Tell the story of the camping car because I love that story.
Yeah. I actually bought a van, a camper. Wow, how long ago now? I think I have it for 5 years. Or 4 years. And I traveled with it a lot to a lot of countries as well, and even lived for 2 years full time in it.
Well, you lived for 2 years inside.
Yep. And then I actually met my girlfriend like a year...
In the camping car. You opened the door and she was there.
She just happened to be
hello.
inside. No. No, yeah, so when I was actually... Because now I'm in Antwerp, I'm more like permanently just living here. But I think it was like a year ago that I was still living like full-time in my van in the city here in Antwerp. And then I was just like, sleeping there, going to a co-working place to work there. I had like the city bikes that I could just like take to go back to my car, sleep there, cook there, it worked perfectly. And I loved it so much because it was like an extreme freedom that I'm so grateful that I took. Because now, I'm together with someone and we have an apartment now. It's a bit more comfortable, of course, to do that. And it makes more sense now. But yes. So I was living quite more of a digital nomad lifestyle a few years ago, because when I was not living in my van, in the winter I went out for like 4 months or 6 months to travel and live in Bali or Barcelona, for example.
Okay, so in which countries were you when you were living in the van? You said you lived for 2 years in the van.
I was in Antwerp then. Those 2 years that I was like full-time living in it, I was in Antwerp. But then in the winters, I just went away for like 3 or 4 months, or even 6 months sometimes, to a warmer country.
Yeah, you were going to Bali, I remember. Huh?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, I mean, the upside is that you don't have to pay rent, right?
Exactly. So there was like no downsides to it at all. There was literally nothing of a downside to living like that.
I really should do that, actually. I've
It's
been paying
great.
rent for how many years now? Since I was 19. So it's been 8 years I've been paying rent. Imagine if I had put the money towards getting a camper van instead.
Well, you gotta trade some comfort things, of course, in exchange for that kind of freedom. So it's not for everyone, but and I have a personal YouTube channel. I actually made a vlog explaining exactly everything on how I lived 2 years in a van. So there's actually a video that people can find on my YouTube channel where I talk about this and showed a bit of my day-to-day kind of living in my van.
So this whole van life thing, this is also quite recent, but you were also doing it much before everyone else, as I can see.
Yeah.
So basically, if we want to predict the future trends, all we have to do is to watch you doing whatever you do now, and then we'll be like, okay, like in 5-6 years, it will be mainstream.
Yeah, there's some other people out there where you can just like, who just are so good at, in a way, predicting the future, but it's not so much of predicting, it's just like sort of knowing and seeing where it will develop to the future. And in a way, yeah, I've been quite alright in doing that too. I'm not saying with everything, right? But with certain things.
No, I mean, honestly, it's quite impressive because you just went out after high school and you build your own life without many people mentoring you or whatever. You just did your own thing. And I think today, with all of the social pressure that we have and the need to respect a certain path, I think this independence of mind is really, really impressive. We're nearing the end of the interview. So what's the best piece of advice you have ever received, or something that you wish you had learned 10 years ago that you could tell people now? So something where really you wish, something that would help the listeners' life.
It's something that I always just tell myself again, because I think it's such a good reminder. It's not per se something that I wished I knew 10 years ago, but it's just something that I think is a general good piece of advice for anyone listening who is, just for anyone listening actually, who's doing whatever, is to just, to not forget to enjoy the journey. I have so much work with the IPS project. There's, every day, there's always more work to do. There's a lot of benefits to having your own company and being, self-employed, but there's definitely some downsides in a way to it. And one of them is that there's never an end to it. And it can sometimes, when I just look at the long-term goals where I want to get, which are like in some years in the future, it can seem like such a big mountain. But, it's about the journey towards that mountain that is so important to not forget. Because it's a saying that people probably have heard, but it's during the journey that all the growth and happiness sort of occurs, right? And happens. And I try to just be more mindful on that to also not forget to enjoy the journey. And I do, right? But it's still good to keep reminding yourself of that, of whatever you're going through or doing right now. For anyone listening, is to just don't forget that. Even if it's hard, in a way, try to enjoy the journey. Those are the learning points.
I've just finished a book called The Inner Game of Tennis. Did you read this book?
I actually do not know the book, no.
Okay, it's kind of an old book. I think it was written in 1972. Wow. And, I don't want to talk too much about the book because it's a podcast about you, right? But basically, they said the exact same stuff. It's all about the journey. Okay. It's all about enjoying doing whatever you're doing. And really, the purpose of life is to find that thing that you enjoy doing without getting paid. Whether you're tired or how you're full of energy, something you just really, really enjoy working, even if every day is not a happy day, right? You have a good time in the lows and in the highs. Exactly. And they were really saying it was the key to a happy life. Okay, amazing. Yeah. So tell us, where can people find you if you want to promote whatever, some courses, some website, your YouTube channel you said you had.
Sure.
Let us know where people can find you.
Right. Well, if you want to check out the IPS project, just go to theipsproject.com. You know, there's a lot of great content on there.
I guess so. After 8 years of creating content, so yeah.
Well, yeah. Especially the podcast, I could highly recommend actually to anyone listening to check out. There's so many amazing guests on it. And then if you just want to check my personal website out, it's just jellisvaes.com. There you can find like all my, I don't know, social media pages there, or the YouTube channel, because I'm quite active on my personal YouTube channel. Actually, I really enjoy that. That's just also on YouTube. Just type in Jellis Vaes and you will immediately find the YouTube channel.
Okay, you are the only Jellis Vaes on the internet.
Yeah. I have not found too many people with my exact name.
Well done. Okay, Jellis, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for the interview. It was actually super fun.